How to prevent civil war or dichotomy war from a metaphysical perspective. First, I want to clarify that civil war is not necessarily a physical thing. It could be a mental, emotional, or spiritual thing. In this instance, defined by two warring factions of equal or semi-equal energetic weight. The most important thing to consider with civil war type of scenarios is the concept of dichotomy, which is two dueling energetic factors. Typically, these are polar opposites. Theoretically, we can assign value to anything and everything that we know, and we can put it in category A or category B. The first step in this process may sound obvious, but it is the most important and the most overlooked, and it's simply the concept of acknowledgement and acceptance. And I'm not talking about the war itself being acknowledged. Acknowledging and accepting dichotomy allows us to not only assign value, which provides this context and clarity, and also potentially the root source of the problem and our issues. It allows us to just simply understand what is dichotomy, whether that is male or female, Republican, Democrat, A, B, whatever you want to assign it to be. While these are more so physical manifestations of dichotomy, it's important to look into what is abstract as well. In other words, right or wrong. When we get so over-involved in dichotomy, it can be really challenging to see the opposing forces' point of view. So we start to become really fractaled from the overarching collective and really siloed into our own views and opinions. This can be really damaging because we start to sort of overinflate our ego and pinpoint the opposition as the enemy. Philosophical perspective, there is no real reason why we should be so immersed in dichotomy. The concept of right and wrong is actually a fallacy. Right and wrong only exist at a certain point in place in time. Although as a conscious collective, we do understand that some things are morally right and morally wrong. Again, these concepts change over time, and they're also incredibly subjective, pending a singular person's point of view. When we decide that we uphold the moral compass for the entire collective, we not only assert our own values and energetic importance, but we also assert lack of freedom and control. We are all part of the same collective. We are just opposite sides of a coin. We need to accept and acknowledge all people. It's important to note that there are still boundaries in regards to this process. Again, we cannot enforce lack of freedom and control, but we can accept any and all human beings as they are. Lack of this acceptance just fuels violence and destruction. On top of this, not acknowledging and accepting your feelings is the exact opposite of transmission of negative energy. It's repression and rejection. Negative energy and negative people do not cease to exist simply because we ignore them. In fact, rejected and repressed emotions, just because they are not in the light of day, will ultimately come through with extreme force when the right energetic environment allows it to. Reconciling differences. When we are so extreme in dichotomy, we feel that there is existence and non-existence. Things that we do not like should simply not exist, and things that we do like should exist. This is another form of extremism where we feel that the only option is to destroy the other part of our consciousness. People are working out of a place of love, or simply whatever is their highest good. We must allow people to continue on their journey and live in a way which is acceptable to them, particularly if it's in alignment with their intuition and their highest self. Anything and everything can and should exist, again, with the consideration of boundary. All thoughts, feelings, and emotions should be supported. Intention setting. If we cannot predict or visualize an ideal outcome, it will never exist. There is absolutely power in manifestation and intention setting. Accepting dichotomy on an individual level as well as a collective level. So we're starting to understand accepting and acknowledging this energy, but we need to understand how it's relevant to us as a person, as an individual, as well as the larger collective. If there are parts of you that you hate, reject, or repress, it's time to face those fears and reintegrate. If you cannot heal yourself, you will not be able to heal the collective. I think that a lot of people project their own insecurity with control onto the larger collective as if they do not have any fault or responsibility in terms of the larger process. Our own healing is incredibly integral for the larger collective healing. Even if you feel that you are insignificant in this process, it's pretty clear that an individual person's hate on themselves is incredibly damaging and destructive to the collective at large. One person can ruin the world with hate and destruction. One person can also save it. Collective at large cannot change if we as individuals cannot change ourselves first. Deduce overarching concepts and themes. In a civil war or dichotomy war example, underlying issue is that both sides cannot coexist at once. As a result, both sides need to provide space, options, and opportunity for the other. You cannot fall into the trap that there can only be one. Reduce arrogance and ignorance that you are right. As we talked about, being right is a fallacy, and more importantly, one that is only valid at a certain point in place in time. Feeling like you are only right only feeds into this dichotomy loop, which is how we got here in the first place. There needs to be a sense of reflection and understanding that morality and justice is ever-flowing, subjective, and it's much more abstract than we think. Transmission of frustration and anger on both sides. If we don't find healthy ways of transmuting our own personal negative energy, we're going to start pinning this onto the opposition. You're going to start feeling like they are the problem for everything, for our own personal problems and for the problems of the larger collective. We're going to start shifting this blame and projecting it onto others. This is aligned to the message of transmuting our own negative energy as well as self-healing. Reminding ourselves that our external reality is simply a reflection of what is inside ourselves. Consider that whatever you do not like in this world, whatever you do not like about your opposition, is thematically or conceptually what you may not like about yourself. Resolve this within yourself, heal yourself, and then we will heal the world and the collective. We are all part of source energy. We are all part of the same collective. We can all coexist at once. And we can help each other release negative energy from within ourselves as well as a larger collective and other people.